Welcome back. Today is part 3 of our series of how much matcha should you put in your drinks. So we started with how much matcha we should put in clear matcha, that means pure matcha, just water and the matcha powder. The second episode was about how much matcha to use when we are making classic matcha latte. And today, this is the final of the series. It is going to be how much matcha should we put in our classic cold whisk matcha latte. Stick around until the end of this video clip and we're going to find out the golden ratio. First, let us clarify the differences between a classic matcha latte and a cold whisk matcha latte. In a classic, you whisk the matcha with a bit of water first, and then you pour it over milk and ice. In a cold whisk matcha, we don't need to whisk it with water. All we need to do is to whisk the matcha directly in the milk. So one is more refreshing, the classic matcha, because it has less milk. But on the other hand, the cold whisk matcha will be more creamy and more milky. Should we use more matcha when it is cold whisk, or should we use the same matcha that we use for classic matcha latte? For the recipe today, I am going to use my blend, which is uji matcha here. This is samidori, a little bit on the premium side, and it is called seijaku. And we are going to use milk, which in this case I'm going to use oat milk. You can use any milk of your choice. So in the previous video I used dairy milk. This time we're going to try with oat milk. I have here 3 bowls, and we are going to make these for 12 ounces cups. The recipes for 16 and 22 will be in the description box. So first bowl has 4 grams of pure matcha, second bowl has 5 grams of pure matcha, and the third bowl has 6 grams of pure matcha. For the sweetener, I'm going to make it simple. I'm going to use plain sugar syrup for each one of these cups. I have here the first bowl with 4 grams of matcha. I'm just going to put a little bit of my milk and whisk. Once you're happy that everything has been fully dissolved, look at that beautiful texture there, I'm going to add the rest of my milk, but this time I'm going to just whisk the top. You don't really want to immerse your whisk in the milk. Okay, so now just the top here. Make sure that the milk is combined with my matcha. And this is my first cold whisk matcha using 4 grams. Now I'm going to work on my 5 grams of matcha here. Once again, I'm going to start with just a little bit of the milk. The ratio of the milk here is 150 ml for my 12 ounce cup. I'm using 150 ml of milk. Beautiful color there. And now that I'm happy, look at that texture there, I'm going to pour the rest of my milk in. And once again, just whisk the surface. At this stage, you can add the sweetener, or you can add the sweetener in the serving cups. So I'm going to add my sweetener later. And this is now my second cold whisk matcha using 5 grams. And now for my final cup, this is 6 grams of matcha. Now just a simple tip here, if you're using a bowl with a spout here, I would suggest that you make sure that the spout is either facing outward or the side of your dominant hand, because you're going to hold the matcha, the bowl, with your non-dominant hand, and you don't want to be touching this because you will be pouring the drink from there. So I'm going to now add my milk and whisk. I prefer whisking just the center all the time. At the center, you don't have to really go left and right, just the center here. And then, okay, at the end maybe you zigzag left and right. You get this beautiful matcha mixed here, and then I'm going to add the rest of my milk and just whisk the surface. This is my third bowl, cold whisk matcha using 6 grams. This is using 5 grams, and this is using 4 grams. Looking at the color here, the one with 6 grams is darker than the 4. So you have a lighter green, slightly darker, and the darkest color. Now we are ready to assemble into our serving cup. I'm using plain sugar syrup here. My proportion for 12 ounce is 10 ml of sugar syrup, so that's 2 pumps. Each pump is 5 ml. And then now I'm going to pour my cold whisk matcha using 4 grams into my serving cup. This time we're going to pour the next cold whisk matcha, 10 ml of sugar syrup into the serving cup. And this is my cold whisk using 5 grams of matcha. Swirl it so that you get all the residue. And this is using 5 grams of matcha. Beautiful texture in this cup too. Final cup, 10 ml of sugar syrup and our cold whisk matcha using 6 grams. Beautiful dark color here. 6 grams, 5 grams, and 4 grams. And now for the moment of truth. Let's look at the visual of these 3 cups here. So with the 4 grams of matcha, I could see a thin layer of the foam on top, and with the 5 grams, slightly thicker layer, and the 6 grams has got a thicker layer of foam here. So it seems like the more matcha you use, the more foam you generate in your drinks, okay? Now in terms of color, again, I suppose it's understandable to say that with less matcha, the color is less green than the one using 6 grams of matcha. It is now down to the taste. That is delicious. That is also delicious. And finally, 6 grams. Wow. That is definitely the most delicious one. So I'd say that when you use 4 grams, the taste of the matcha is not bad, because especially I'm using oat milk here, so whatever the taste of your matcha is, it will complement with the taste of the oat, which makes it a bit more nutty and more earthy. And then the 5 grams, I could also taste the matcha and the sweetener, but the 6 grams, in this case, I think is the one that works perfectly with 12 ounces cups in a cold whisk manner. So I'd say for a 12 ounce cup, use 6 grams of matcha. That should be my golden ratio. And this will all change possibly depending on the matcha that you use. But with this experiment today, I'd say the golden ratio for cold whisk matcha is 6 grams to 150 ml of milk. For 16 ounces cup, I would say that it would be about 7 grams of matcha to about 180 ml of milk. And for 22 ounces, I would say is 8 grams of matcha to 210 ml of milk. So my preference was using 6 grams of matcha. Let me find out what Jerome thinks. There you go. He also likes 6 grams of matcha. That's all I would like to share with you today. I hope that this video clip is useful, and the series on the golden ratio for matcha, for clear matcha, classic matcha latte, and cold whisk matcha latte would be beneficial to those with shops and also for those that are making matcha at home. I'll see you again next time. In the meantime, thank you for watching. Ciao for now.